Hi everyone. Okay, I'm just gonna wait for a bit while a few of you join. Okay. Hi everyone. This is Naini Thakur. I'm a reporter with Forbes India. Welcome to Mind Matters. It's an Instagram live series where every Tuesday we'll be discussing various aspects of mental health and how it affects people of different walks of life, from children and young adults to homemakers as well as sports people. Our guest today is Sonali Gupta. She is a clinical psychologist with 16 years of experience. She works with young adults, artists, NGOs, as well as corporates, essentially to enhance emotional well being. She works essentially at the intersection of grief, relationships, anxiety, compassion, and resilience. In May 2020, she launched her book, Anxiety, Overcome It, and Live Without Fear. And with over close to 60,000 subscribers to her YouTube channel, Mental Health with Sonali, she's one of India's biggest mental health practitioners. So I'm just going to add her to this session without waiting any further. Okay. Great. We're just waiting for her. Hi, Sonali. How are you?
Hello, Nani. I'm doing good. How are you? Can you
I
see me?
am I'm doing super well too. Great. So I'm just going to turn off comments because we already have questions from our audience. Great. So no distractions.
Great.
Right.
Can you
So
see and hear me fine?
I can perfectly
Ah,
fine. So
so
we're,
that's
we're
good.
good in terms of the tech aspect of it. So thank you.
Yeah.
Great. First of all, Sonali, thank you so much for taking out the time. I know you've been super busy, so thanks a lot for doing this with us. It means a lot. And I'm sure our audiences have been looking forward to this given the number of questions that we got. So thank you so much.
Thank you for making me part of this. I'm looking forward to speaking to you.
Of course. I mean, we're going to be talking about anxiety management today. So, why don't we start with the very basics, which is tell us a little about what is anxiety and, is it something that can be self treated at all?
I think there are two parts to it. So I think let's start with what anxiety looks like, and then maybe we can get to the part about how can one manage it. Is that
Right.
fine? Yes. So I think anxiety, to look at it, it's neither, it's not a negative emotion, like I mentioned in my book. It, like any other emotion, serves a purpose for all of us. So, if we do a bit of a tech check before a live, it's the way of ensuring that it goes fine, right? And that degree of anxiety is fairly healthy. Or during the COVID protocol, following the protocol, wearing the mask, having that some degree of precaution is necessary, and some degree of anxiety is also healthy. I think anxiety becomes a concern when we consistently or for large periods of time we are in a state where we feel restless, we are second guessing ourselves, we feel that we won't be able to handle situation, task, we feel a sense of low self-esteem, self-doubt, and we also are in a we find ourselves ruminating consistently, thinking about the same things, or also into like a downward spiral of ruminative thoughts, thinking about what could go wrong. And if anxiety happens, it consistently, it kind of controls your mood. It also has an impact on on your functioning on a day-to-day level. And if the symptoms are intense and very frequent, then it becomes a concern, and that's when anxiety needs attention. Does that answer what you had in mind?
Yes, yes, it absolutely does. And it's a great link to my next question, which is also that, what are some severe symptoms of anxiety disorders that one has to have when you kind of need, or rather,
Hello.
that, it's time I need to seek external help, or that it's getting a little too much.
So, anxiety disorders are a huge spectrum. So there are a lot of, conditions would come under it. If we keep the focus on anxiety at large, if you feel that you massively, anybody who's even listening to us today, if they feel that they find themselves in a situation where they are consistently struggling, by consistently, I mean they are massively on a, the symptoms of, let's say, the panic attacks are very frequent, and also debilitating, where they cannot manage their mood, they find it hard to function, then that's one of the first signs that
Okay.
in cases where there are debilitating panic attacks. Secondly, also, if you feel that your thoughts are consistently going on, it's hard to make your mind stop, and the thoughts are so many that you're second guessing yourself at all given times, then that's another sign that you may need to talk to someone. And when we are talking about it here, we are talking about a mental health professional. So there's a psychologist, like I'm a psychologist, and I talk to clients, and the process which we call therapy. And then there is a psychiatrist who primarily medicates the clients and also listen to what they may have to discuss. So, based on the frequency of symptoms, how severe they are, the therapist or the psychiatrist can figure whether, you would need therapy or you would need medication. And I think that's a individual plan for each person there. When it comes to, for example, other symptoms, for example, that people find it that that there are palpitations, there is this consistent feeling of avoidance. One of the key symptoms of anxiety is avoidance, where people would want to avoid getting into situations where they feel anxious. So whether it's a school setup, whether it's a job setup, or whether it's making presentations, whether it's meeting new people. So in all those setups, those are some of the signs which are clearly signs that possibly you need to address it with a mental health professional. And that's where you definitely need to reach out to one. Yes.
Understood. You know, I mean, things have just gotten worse because of the pandemic. Daily routines have been disrupted. Everyone's kind of working long hours. In a time like this, how can one find some downtime for self-care?
So, I think going back to also what you asked before, I think can anxiety be, A, treated, and B, this part about the pandemic where anxiety is what each one of us has experienced, in that sense. I think the part that we can take care of, the part we can manage at the end of it, is the part around how do we build time to take care of not just ourselves, but how do we build time to even acknowledge what we are feeling, right? Like, I think a lot of people during the pandemic may have felt anxious, but it may have taken a while for them to even articulate what's happening. So,
Yes.
the first step is to articulate and acknowledge and work around and not shame yourself for feeling anxious. I think we live in a culture where we feel something and then we shame ourselves for it, right? We shame ourselves for why am I not being able to deal with it? Why am I struggling with it? It's normal if you're feeling anxious. All of us have experienced it, including me during the pandemic. So I think that's first. The second is, there's something I talk about in the book called pause ritual. The one of the reasons for writing the book also was the book is not a substitute for therapy, and I clearly mentioned that in the book, but is to offer people a toolkit that helps them to learn, what are some techniques which they can use if they struggle with immediately or in the short run to begin with, in that sense. So one of the rituals I suggest is pause ritual. So years back when I had my own burnout, which was about 7 years back, I came up with this term pause ritual. What pause ritual basically means is that we schedule pause as a part of our schedule. I think what currently happens with the pandemic is that we move from one day into another
Yeah. Yeah.
without even realizing that we have not taken a break,
Quite
right? And
literally. Yeah.
yes, and all our work has shifted to the phone or to the laptops, right? So the idea is that schedule a pause in your calendar. And when I use the term pause ritual, what I primarily mean by it is it primarily means what can you do, in the context of what are the activities you can engage in while you engage in pause ritual that seem to stabilize you, that seem to self soothe you. And also, these are activities you would engage in in a monotasking sense. So
Okay.
one of the ways to deal with our anxiety and also with the hustle and, in our life and also slowing down is learning not to be consistently multitasking. And I think a lot of us are find it hard to not multitask, right? And
Yeah.
particularly when one is working online. So learning
Yeah.
not to multitask and also engage in activities which may be soothing to you. So for example, these could be a wide range of activities, right? Like while I'm talking to you, my focus is only in talking to you and not doing other things. That could be one way of doing it. The other could be, let's say, I'm having a cup. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can. I think there was a
Sorry.
slight lag. Now we're good.
Yeah. So I said, for example, I'm having a cup of tea. It would be just a cup of tea that I'll have. Like now, I try and not look at the phone while having that cup of tea. Or
Okay.
even to the extent, like when I'm going for a walk, it's just the walk that I'm doing. I'm not engaging in any other process, even to the extent that now I make a choice to not listen to podcasts because I'm multitasking again, where I'm trying to make my walk also about trying to learn, catch up on information,
Yeah.
and not get into a cycle of productivity guilt. So, how
Yeah.
not to get into a cycle of productivity guilt? So, that's
So
one of
it's
the areas.
literally like give a pause to that hustle life, which I mean, us millennials tend to call it that. So I mean, just need to stop, which is, I think,
Yes,
which is a great
absolutely.
tip, because no one tends to do that. I think so. So yeah,
And we all
absolutely.
are guilty of, multitasking at some point or
Yeah.
the other. And I think it takes away the joy of just being present in the moment. And I think it's important to stay present,
Yeah.
and I think with anxiety, at least, we most likely either think about things we have done wrong in the past or what in the future can go wrong. There will be
Yeah.
something I can't
Yeah,
control.
yeah, absolutely. And with everyone being stuck at home, there are these strains that have it has caused on relationships, and I don't mean just couples, but I also mean parents and children, parents and grandparents. I mean, everyone's just stuck at home and
True.
doing their own thing. So, in such a situation, how does one create a more sort of positive environment?
So I think the first step, I think every situation is very, very different. So it's hard to have like an umbrella statement in the
Of course,
context of what everyone can do.
right.
But I think it's important to, instead of looking at, when it looking at A, you need to look inwards and figure what is the current situation, when are you struggling for space, for example, with so many people? Are you struggling for social connections? I think a good way is to understand what is the pandemic or even the act of being at home evoking in each one of us. And I'm sure that feeling is different for some people. Like, like I have clients, friends who I've spoken to say that, oh, this is perfect for them,
Yeah.
like they don't have to go out and meet anyone, it works well. You don't have too much stimulation to deal with, no small talk in that sense.
Yeah.
And then there are some people, including me, who are, extroverts, who really miss, like I miss the random
Yeah.
conversation I would have with the cab driver. I would
Yeah.
go to like a coffee shop, bump
Yeah.
into people. I miss those, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's different for each person. And
Mhm.
it's a good idea to ask and to explore what is it being evoked in you to begin with, and then look at what is in your locus of control, right? Like given the safety protocol, what can you do and how can you work around it?
Yeah, definitely. And having said that, job losses and financial strain is, another major issue that I think most people have gone through during this pandemic, and you know that has led to a lot of anxiety. So tell us, what are some experiences that you're hearing from your patients, of course, without giving any names, and what are the
Yes,
experiences that they're facing?
absolutely. I think at this time, whether it's job losses, whether it's pay cuts, I think the financial insecurity or the scarcity lens is very, very real. So what I'm hearing is, even with people who have their jobs and even those who have lost it on both those ends. There's a huge scarcity mindset, and that mindset to some degree is even realistic, where a lot of people feel even if they have a job, they may not have it. It almost seems like a threat that anytime
Yeah.
their job can go
Yeah.
away. So, one is that.
Mm-hmm.
The second is, I think a lot of people, their sense of identity, when sometimes, and I don't think sometimes, I think a lot of times, at least, in your 20s, in your 30s, and as an elder millennial, I relate to that very well also, that
Yeah.
till a certain point, a huge part of your identity also comes from the job that you have, right? So
Absolutely.
I think, so what I'm also hearing is that a lot of people feel that sense of identity being squashed almost. The place you worked with gave you not just the money, but also a sense of identity, how you are looked upon socially, all of it. So I think that's impacted one.
Right.
Second, I think a lot of people, their life decisions have pretty much come to a standstill where people are wondering, whether to get married, whether to plan for kids, or whether to, buy this house, whether to move to a different city. Because at this point, they are, they either don't have jobs, or they have massive pay cuts, or there's a fear that they may lose jobs. So I think that's massive anxiety, and a lot of that anxiety is very, very realistic for anyone who's struggling. And sadly, I don't think there's any one solution. And with the pandemic, at least in India, still things have gotten better, of course, as compared to the second wave. But
Right.
still, I think people are still, I think there's no answer. We still are in a state of flux there.
Right. And how does one sort of deal with collective grief? I mean, all of us have lost close ones, and it's just a terrible time that we're living in. So how do you deal with it?
Yes, I think absolutely. I think people have either lost their loved ones, and if people have not lost their loved ones, I think there's also vicarious grief, right? We know, even if you have not lost someone directly, we all know either someone in our circles, or either someone who you knew via social media, or other people, or even what happened in, Delhi. Like, I live in Bombay, but when we heard about how bad the situation was in Delhi, or even in Bombay at one time, I think those were enough for us to be drawn into a state where one consistently feels that grief, because it's part of that shared humanity where even if you don't know someone, you still feel the grief, right? So, having said that, I think the first thing is to acknowledge the grief. I think a lot of people end up feeling guilty saying, oh, I have been safe, and I'm so far away, I'm not allowed to feel the grief. The reality is, collective grief is reflection of our shared humanity, and it's a good idea to give yourself the permission to grieve, one. And second, ask yourself again that what is being evoked in you when you listen to these stories. Does it evoke your personal fear that something may happen to a loved one? Does it evoke a fear that something may happen to you? Do you feel helpless? What are you feeling? And once you go deeper into that, you may also learn what you may be able to do in that situation, to process that grief.
Right, absolutely. And you are a clinical psychologist, but you're a human being first. Tell us how you've dealt with a time like this. It's uncertainty, anxiety, and of course, you've been getting constant calls from your patients. So, what is it like for you mentally?
So I think, like everyone else, it's not been the easiest. I've been pandemic fine, like I always say. Like, I've stayed, till now. One has tried to stay as much at home, and also when go out, be careful. Health wise, I think I have been fine. To begin with. As of now, at least, and one jab in, it feels like a relief of its own sort. At least one jab,
Yeah,
so that feels like a
yeah,
relief to begin
yeah.
with. I think last year there was anxiety. I think March, April, May didn't seem so anxious last year, because I, like everyone else, thought that by August, September, I'll be back to work.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I really thought that, oh, this is still just June, July. Anyways, Bombay has monsoon. So, by July, August, September, I'll be back to work. So there was that hope around it and everything. But I think by August, September, when things didn't improve, I think one is, so I felt anxious. Also, as an extrovert, I love being out, being indoor is not what I really enjoy per se. So that's been difficult.
Yeah.
Also, doing sessions is supremely complicated with technology. While I used to also do some bit of online work even before the pandemic, so this was not a new medium per se, but I think there's this constant, the sessions, while one has adapted to it, there are a lot of interruptions, right? Like, can you hear me? The
Yeah.
client is in midst of sharing something, and, on either side, the internet will,
Go
just
back.
drop.
Yeah.
So, so I think professionally, those have been challenges. Also, some of my clients don't have the privacy to talk. So I think that's been a huge challenge that they can't do the sessions because of that. I think the other larger bit around it is, I think last year my schedule, like everyone, was all over, where I just kept thinking, oh, it's going to end now, it's going to end now. So the work, there were extended work, lot of emergencies, and I think not having that schedule in the sense of a clean closure ritual did make it tough. Otherwise, while I used to work at the clean, I would have a proper closure ritual. Now I do have a proper closure ritual. I end my day at a certain time. There's still grief work, but now I finally accepted and acknowledged that I may just have to work from home even next 4 5 months. And I think in March, when I adapted to it, things got easier. But I think it has been overwhelming, and whether it's the pause rituals, also my daughter, homeschools, so also managing studies, also यहाँ पे बैठे हो वहां पे मिट्टी दिख रही है इतनी सारी, और लग रहा है अरे यहाँ पे क्लाइंट बात कर रहा है, वहां पे मेरे को मिट्टी दिख रही है, पानी नहीं भरा है. So I think so that also contributed to a sense of how much there was to do on a daily basis. And now I think now I've adapted around to, वो भी मिट्टी नहीं दिखती है, वो मैं उसको इग्नोर करना सीख लिया 1 साल में. But it has taken that long. And pause rituals, having clear closure rituals around it, and also with work, figuring a way when to have a clean end to the day. I think that's something that has really really helped, around it. And even with homeschooling, with my husband and daughter, and I, we have a far better understanding of it. I think the first year was a challenge for all of us.
Right, absolutely. So that's it from my end in terms of questions, and I think now we'll take a couple of audience questions that we
Sure.
got today. The first one is it's quite interesting, and I think it's very realistic, which is that how do you stop a spiral once you're in it and none of the usual techniques are working?
So, it is, thank you for asking that. I'm not sure what techniques are they referring to, but I
Right.
think to begin with, often when there's a spiral happening, a thought spiral, people end up catastrophizing, which I also mentioned in the book, as where we are thinking about worst case scenarios back to back. So when you're thinking about, let's say, for example, if you think, you've got a slight fever, the person will not just start thinking, I've got COVID. The person will also start thinking, मेरे को COVID हो गया, and I'll land up in the hospital. I'll not find a hospital bed, and will directly go to the worst case scenario. So when people are directly going to worst case scenarios and also catastrophizing, I think that comes in the way of managing. So I think the first step is to recognize that. I think the second is also, if a spiral, by spiral, the person means a panic attack or feeling very anxious, it may be a good idea. What does help is sometimes, to get up, to walk a little. And, if you have someone close to you in the house, to be able to hold their hand, to explain to them either what's happening, or just that social soothing in the context of presence does a lot of, does really help. And if it's a panic attack, and that's the spiral that somebody is mentioning about, even an act of splashing water on your face, or, at that time, calling someone can help some people there, around it. So those are some of the things that can help. And yes, like a meditation may not help at all, sometimes it can worsen during the spiral. So it's a good idea to not engage in it. Also, deep breathing may not work at that time. So I don't think those are techniques that one needs to blindly use and then think that why are they not working.
Right, absolutely. We take one last question from the
Sure.
audience, which is how to control morning anxiety. I think that's something that a lot of us kind of, go through on a regular basis. So, how do you deal with that?
So I think, so if your anxiety primarily strikes in the morning, and that's what, someone maybe when you get up in the morning, it may be important to ask and to identify, maybe like I mentioned in the book, maybe maintain a log, figure what are the thoughts associated, what triggers that degree of anxiety. The second technique, which, I have engaged in, also mentioned, is to do, I used to for the longest time do morning pages. So which meant that in the morning I would write about a free flow about what's in my mind, almost like a emptying ritual, a clearing the air ritual. So,
Okay.
like, and I would write it without editing. So for example, oh, I forgot to call my mom, oh, I forgot to send this email, and just put it down. The act of just putting it down allowed the anxiety to not get locked in the body. Also, what sometimes can help is, as a, more than a pause ritual, to ask yourself what's a self-care ritual you can engage in that manages to center you. So, is it your personal soothing ritual of, watering your plants, for example? Is it a ritual of listening to your favorite, playlist, for example, clearing your desk space, what is it that seems to calm you down before you enter work? And I think the biggest one actually is, don't begin by looking at your phone, because very often a phone is a reminder of 100 things that have not been done, right? Or, a mail from your boss, a mail from somebody who you need to respond an emergency. So it's a good idea to maybe give yourself 15-20 minutes before you get bombarded by those messages.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great way to end this conversation on, because I think most of us literally wake up, even if it's 5 a.m. in the morning, and check our phones. So
Yes,
I think
we
great
all
advice.
are guilty of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Great, Sonali. Thank you so much. This was a fabulous conversation, and thank you to everyone who sent us questions and whoever stuck around. And thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back next Tuesday with another episode of Mind Matters. Thank you so much once again, Sonali. See you
Thank
soon.
you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Nani, and thank you to the entire Forbes India team for having me. Bye. Speak to you soon.
Absolutely. Bye bye.
Bye.